Hey, hello, welcome to the Improv Tip of the Month. This Improv Tip of the Month is all about confusing chords. And I'm Bradley Sowash, and I'm going to be exploring some confusing chords with you, chord symbols that throw people off. I was just messing around here with some C chords. I'm thinking about all the different ways you could play a C chord. And that led to other chords. Chords are so much a wonderful part of piano playing. What other instrument can play bass chords and melody? That's why people love to hear this piano as a solo instrument. Now I'm just playing solo here, no particular tune. What I'm doing is exploring chords. Welcome, Faye and Diana. Thanks for stopping by. I'm just getting the sound of chords in our ears before we talk about breaking down some of these confusing chords. So one of the things I love to do on a rich sounding piano is, play with the various colors and things that are available in the chords. Hey, Marty. Thanks for dropping by. And Joyce, a piano student among many others that are here. So I'm just exploring chords here on this to get the sound going before we dig in a little bit. What do chords sound like? I'm not really playing a tune. Basically, I'm just noodling. I'm feeling a need for speed, though, right? So let's put some groove to this. Slowing it down. Just having fun with sounds, with combined notes in various clusters and voicings. Now let's wrap this up. I end on a 6-9 chord. What a great chord. All right. Well, if you're just joining us, I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator. And today I'm going to try to break down some of the common stumbling blocks while we think about when we deal with chord symbols, pop jazz chord symbols, and some of the irrelevant and confusing things that come up with that. I want to welcome a couple of friends here on the comments, so I need to take a look. Hi, Bradley. Did you learn French? Oui, je parle français. I used to live in Belgium and spoke a little bit of French. Tina, new piano. Yeah, no, it's actually an old one. It's just new for the camera. So anyway, we're going to look at this in six sections in just a half hour. I just want to talk about a quick refresher about traditional chords. Then I'm going to talk about chords with missing notes, and then chords that add color, and then chords with temporary notes. You may not have thought of them this way. And then slash chords. At the end, I'll be happy to answer your chord questions if I can. So you might think about those as we go along. Let me give the official intro here because I took all the time to write this. So let me put this down for posterity. Confusing chords. What the heck is a G5 chord? Is there a difference between a C2 and a C add 2? Doesn't G6 have the same notes as E minor 7? And what's up with slash chords like C over D? So I'm going to break those down for you now. Let's just think for a minute about what traditional chords are and how they're built and why they're built that way. Everybody who's here probably learned at some point that traditional Western music chords are, really chords around the world, are built in thirds, the interval of a third, such as C to E. And the reason for that is because the third has a lot of character to it, right? So we can have C to E, and it has a suggested, perhaps, happy major sound, and then the C to E flat is still a third, but it has that minor sound. So chords are built on the premise that thirds lend character and mood and emotion and get to those ineffable did I just say a word that's complicated? Ineffable feelings that music can address that are hard to talk about. So we need that emotion and those colors that thirds offer. So if chords were built on other possible intervals, you can see how they would be a lot less full of character. So if we built chords, for example, in fifths, let's play a C and a G together. You know, it's a pleasant sound, but it doesn't have any character. It's kind of sterile. It's just kind of open notes. I'm playing C to G in this case. And so without that third, I'll put a minor third in. Now we have the character, right? And even though you can stack up fifths, they still have an openness. So fifths don't make a great way to push through emotion, at least traditionally. We could also do stacking fourths. So let's go C to F. Equally sterile, if you will. Has its uses, but it's not emotional, right? It's sort of blank. And of course, octaves really give us very little chord information at all. So that leaves seconds. Seconds have a little bit of color, C and D, but you can see why building chords in seconds gets into quickly a whole lot of mess, right? So seconds has just a little touch of character, but thirds are where it's at for character, for emotion, for emoting. And furthermore, that when we stack up thirds, we get more and more character. So let me just give you an example here. Let's just make a traditional C chord. And I'm going to do a shout out here to Easy Notes, the made by the family of the Chu, C-H-U family of wonderful pianists. The mother is Lucy and Elaine, and Laura are piano students. And Laura sent me this free one, so I thought I'd use it today. And so here's my C chord on this Easy Notes magic board here. So there's our stacked thirds, C, E, G. But if we keep stacking, and I'll use a different starting point here. Let's make a G7. And so G, B, D, F. Now we have a G7. All right. So by adding that 7, of course, we get a little more character. We have a little bluesiness or a dominant feeling or whatever. And if we keep adding on to that, let's put an A on top, we can get more character. Now we have a 9th. We're running out of fingers, right? And if we put an 11th on there, now we get a pretty ugly chord, actually, because that C is a little bit clashy. But you can do things to fix that, such as make it sharp or whatever. Let's do that G7. Let's put an E on top to make it a G13, okay? I'll make that a little bit cleaner for you. G13. So my point here is not so much to break down complex chord extensions as it is to, to show how thirds can be manipulated to give us more and more character. So we could make that, let's do a G9, we could make that a G minor 9, we could make that a G7 with a flat 9. Ooh, that's colorful, right? So we can manipulate those thirds in a half step this way and that way, or keep it in the middle to get all kinds of character. All this to say that there's a reason why thirds are the basis of Western harmony, because they lend so much character. So that has to do with traditional chords. Let me give a quick check-in here to my buddies. Hey, Elaine, I hope you heard that little shout-out there this minute. Natasha, good morning from California, a long-term student. And just looking through here, I have that board, says Faye. Yeah, it is handy for teaching and grows up on, or is great for Zoom, she says. So I really appreciate that you're here with me live. I don't like to talk to a camera. So we talked about traditional chords. Just a little reminder for most of us. And if you want to understand more about what I just scraped the surface on with 9ths and 13ths and all that, I'll just refer you to a resource. It's my most popular theory and jazz style download, and it's called Understanding Chord Symbols. It comes from a speech I've given many times. So Understanding Chord Symbols, if you want to go deep on that. But the point for today is chords are built in thirds for a good reason. Second part we want to talk about is the weird chords, chords with missing notes. So we see sometimes, maybe you're playing in a church worship band, or or somebody hands you a bunch of chords on an envelope, or there's lyrics with chords written over them. And when that happens, you might see some chords like G5. You know, what is a G5? And a lot of this stuff comes from guitar players, because guitar players, unlike pianists, learn their chords before anything else. They go to their first lesson, they can come home and play Sweet Home Alabama with 3 chords, you know, where pianists sometimes don't learn their chords at all. So if we're going to have a G5 chord, let's just write that down how it might be written, G5 like that, right? We're just talking about a chord that lacks the third. So in this case, G and D. So G and D. It's not really a chord. It's just saying leave that middle note out. In a sense, it's not a chord because it doesn't have character. But it has its uses. Sometimes an openness of a sterile chord can be sort of mysterious. The one that comes to mind, of course, is right, Pink Panther. It's all fifths. But a lot of these chords are described by guitar players because a guitar player, unlike a pianist, has a hard time with so many strings available. You don't want to play all the strings all the time. Sometimes you just want a certain color and a certain few of them, and so you have to mute certain ones or whatever. And there may be conditions where you don't want a third. You just want that open sound, and because that lends itself to the guitar. I'm going to have a little fun here with this guitar. I'm just going to make some noise here and show you a great example of G5 chords, or 5 chords. You're going to love this. This is the first thing you learn when you get an electric guitar, right? Let's get this guy going. Where is it? Is it not going to play for me? There we go. All right. Right? So you get that smoke on the water, that Jimi Hendrix distorted sound. And we can, let me just turn that off there for a minute so it doesn't ring on me. That was G, D, B flat, F, C, right? So the roots are G, B flat, and C, all in fifths. So sometimes you don't want that third, and that could be referred to as a G5. Guitar players call these, Faye just said it, power chords, right? With all that distortion and a stack of Marshall amps up to the ceiling. You've only got to worry about 2 notes, and there's other reasons for it too. Lacking a third is a way of letting the soloist or the improviser choose their third. So just for example, I could play the B naturals over that to give it a cheerful sound, or B flat to give it a darker sound, or both. Indeed, that's part of Boogie Woogie, right? So blues uses a lot of mixture of notes that would be major and minor, and that gives you the option without the chord being set in the accompaniment. So it has its uses. Another one that we hear about is C2, a C2 chord. Okay, so let's just deal with that. This one gets really confusing. We're just called, what does it mean, C2? And I'm going to tell you that as somewhat of an expert on chord and harmony, the answer to that is I don't know what it means. In other words, when I see this on a gig, I'm not sure what to play. I find this pretty confusing. One thing it suggests is C, D, G. C, D, G, right? So like a chord with no third, C, D, G. Because it says C2, right? And just if C5 is just 2 notes, then CD must lack a third as well. That's one interpretation. The problem with this is that collection of notes, C, D, G, is actually a G, a G sus chord, or it overlaps with that. So what is a C2? Probably it means C, D, E, G, but I don't recommend using it. So this sound, C, D, E, G. I recommend that you write this a different way, which I'll explain in a minute. So I would say, in general, just putting a 2 beside a chord is pretty confusing, and you might encounter it. If you do, I would bet it's C, D, E, G. But if you're going to write your own chord symbols, I would suggest that one is not clear. So so that gets by with chords that are missing notes, power chords that are missing a third and based on fifths, and C, D, G as some kind of C2 chord, which I'm not a fan of. So, all right, I just introduced myself here. If you're just joining us, I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator. We're talking today about confusing chords. And I'd like to take a look and see if there are any comments here. Marty says, I'm not the only one who's confused by seeing a C2. D mentions that fifths are great for beginners learning to chord with a melody. Yeah, that two fingers involved is also has its educational uses. Diana is I call her a chord queen. She likes to add the 2 for a run at the end of a song. I agree. It has its uses. We'll get to that. So in my 6 parts today, we've done 2. We talked about traditional chords that are built on thirds. We talked about chords that have missing notes. Now I want to talk about chords that have added color. Notice I'm using the word color rather than character or quality. So a C chord has a major quality, and a C minor chord has a minor quality or character. But now I want to talk about color notes. They're kind of like just extra little hues to add a little. They're subtle and they don't really change the character. A minor chord is a minor chord, whether it has additional color notes or not. So thank you, Laura, for that compliment there. So one of the ones that we already touched on is an add 2 chord. An add 2 chord. So C add 2, C, D, E, G. And absolutely, this is used all over the place in modern choral writing and a lot of modern musicals such as Rent or the last 5 years comes to mind. It's just a really nice sound. So instead of C, F, G, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, C. Did I say that right? Yeah, G, A, B, D. You can hear that it has a little extra hue to it, but it still has that major character. You can do it on minor chords too. C minor, let's add a D to it. So I think if you want to be clear about that chord, that the way to write this, to be clear, is C add 2. That's traditional. C add 2. That way it says, well, we are not making a 3-note chord with C2. We're adding a 2 chord to a C chord. So let's write it down. C add 2. C, E, G plus a D. C, D, E, G. Right there it is. So C add 2. So then the question comes up, and I thank my buddy Jeff for bringing this up this morning in an email, where we talked about what is the difference between a C add 9 and a C add 2. Well, I think C add 9 is one of those chords that you should also avoid writing and understanding, because a ninth is a third. C, E, G, B, D. It's already in thirds, so C major 9 in that case. Or if it were a bit with a B flat, C, E, G, B flat, D, it would be C9. You don't need to say add 9. So now I'm confused. So you're saying C add 9, and yet there is such thing as a C9 chord. So what are we talking about here? Let's just write this down. C add 9. You see this sometimes. So am I talking about C, E, G, B flat, not clear, B natural? The ninth is the D. So are we talking about that D? I'm not sure when I see that. And then I think, well, since it's add, they must mean a 2 chord. The 2 is added. C, D, E, G, like we already talked about. But why not just say it's a 2? Because a ninth implies a 7th is present. So maybe they're asking for this, C, E, G, with a D on top? Oh, I see C, E, G with a D on top. C, E, G, D. The problem is that chord symbols don't, as a rule, suggest a particular voicing. So I would just say PU to add 9s. They are not clear, and if you want that sound, say add 2. C, E, G plus a D. If you want a 9, then call it a 9. C9 or C major 9. So, okay, so now let's add some more colors to this. Yes, Paulette says, does the 9 have to do with the voicing? Maybe I already saw that, or I already answered that. That chord symbols don't suggest voicings. That's up to the individual player. So that makes sense from a theory point of view, but I don't think it's useful. So I'm PU to add 9. Just call it a 9 or call it a C add 2. Now, let's look at a C6 chord. C, E, G plus an A. Right? C, E, G, and A. Here's a little tip. If you want to make a tune a little bit jazzier, just throw some 6s onto them. 6s are not going to interfere with the character or quality. It's just a color note that sort of seems a little bit snazzy. So let's just think about if you're playing a simple song. Okay, now let's do that with 6 chords. C6, F6, G6. Now, one of the questions I have is why isn't it called a C add 6? I don't know the answer to that. If it says C6, it's maybe because it's high enough up that it's kind of a substitute for C7, that we just don't have to say add as we do with the 2-9 confusion. So just traditionally, C6 suffices, or F6 or G6, and that is a wonderful way to add color. In fact, for some tunes, you can't really imagine it without. So let's listen to a little bit of A Train. Duke Ellington's actually is written by Billy Strayhorns. So 1, 2, C6, here it is, and so that's so much a part of that 30s and 40s sound. And here's just a little quick tip: anytime you have a major 7, you can experiment with whether you like the C6 or a C major 7, and sometimes they're interchangeable. So sometimes that works real well as a little color change. Then there's another little chord I want to share with you on that, which is a C6-9 chord. C6-9. So now we have a C chord with the 6, and then we also have it with the 9. So why don't we just call it a C13? Because there's no 7. So doing this in order, not the way I would necessarily play it. C6 chord would be C, E, G, A. That makes it a C6, and we're at a D on top. And that's a really, really pretty chord. It's favored a lot by Vince Guaraldi. I might voice that a little bit more comfortably. Maybe some of you remember this tune "Skating." Taught that a couple of years ago in my Charlie Brown course we did right here in this studio, live online. Whatever am I saying? Let's listen to the 6 chords. 6-9 chords. Let's see. It also, for those of you who are scale freaks or scale monkeys, where you can find a C6-9 chord because it's all 5 notes of the pentatonic scale, and so it's a really nice chord to use to end a tune. So let's just say, and then here's my 6-9 chord, or So that is, we're talking there about chords with added color. Adding color, not character or quality. I'm going to check in with my buddies here. Diana says 6 chords do add so much color. Yep. And Anna's teasing me there. Take that, add 9. So, you're going to see these things, though, and then you just have to ask them what they mean. So let's move on here. Again, I'm Bradley Sowash, your jazz pianist and hopefully educator. I'll just throw out there that you're supposed to say that to everybody. I don't know why, but if you want to hit all your like buttons or, follow my page here, Bradley Sawash Music on Facebook, or if you're seeing this on YouTube later, hit the subscribe or bell or whatever, because I think somehow that's supposed to make me millions of dollars in the future. Anyway, so we've talked about traditional chords, chords with missing notes, chords with added color, and this is a good time to just tell you that yesterday we started our Sunny course, SUNY. That's Sunny. We're doing 2 summer classes about playing 60s and 70s feel-good tunes. We were working yesterday on and those, of course, are 6 chords. Surfing USA, we're doing in Sunny 1. Tomorrow starts the Sunny level 2, and the tune we're hitting in there is I can't remember which one we're doing first. I think it's I know what it is. Let's put some 2s in there. I can see clearly now. So if you'd like to learn to play that, it's not too late to hop on and catch the replay of yesterday's first class, or go on to the second one. And you'll find those at my website. And if you're watching this a lot later, there's always online classes going on, so check that out. So I got 2 more things to hit on here, getting a little low on time. I want to talk about chords with temporary notes. Chords with temporary notes. So if you did want that sound that we talked about earlier, C, D, G, what I would say for that is that that most of the time that's about to become a C chord. You hear this like in James Taylor all the time. Let's see. It's easier to think about it on guitar. So in that case, I'm playing a D. I was trying to think about guitar. I had the notes A, D, and E that became A, D, F sharp. That's just a real comfortable thing to do on guitar. I won't use your time up to pull my guitar back up to demonstrate that, but it has to do with hammering on. They call it, you have an open string, and then you throw your finger down afterwards and die. It's often done on a 2 moving to a 3. And so that, I would call that chord, go ahead and make it a D. I would call that a D sus2 if I wanted that sound. And it would usually be very short. So that might look like this. Let's see, A and E and D. So about something like that. And in just a moment, it's going to become A, D, and F sharp. So the sus is an alert that this is not a permanent chord that we're going to sit on. It's just about to become something else. However, this is not seen very often, that sus sound. I'm just suggesting that if you want that sound of that 3-note, no third chord, then just be clear by calling it a sus chord. And then this one you're going to be more familiar with, which is a G, we're doing it in C, a G sus4. That's a temporary note. It says that we're going to have a G chord with no third. Just temporarily, we're going to have the note in it that is a C. So G, C, D, F sounds like this. And then it's almost always going to resolve, so it becomes G, B, D, F. That would actually be G7 sus4. So that sus is pointing to that C. It's saying, don't play the third yet. And it goes clear back to Gabrielli writing antiphonally for choirs, where some of the parts would be deliberately late, such as sounds sort of like this. Let's see. Let me do it on a C chord. So we have a G chord, it resolves to C, and then someone's late, they fall in. So it's kind of like G7, everybody goes to C, except for one voice, and then it drops in. That's kind of the roots of sus chords. That said, Herbie Hancock, I just can't go by without mentioning that. Maiden Voyage He was one of the first musicians to make a piece that had unresolving sus4 chords with a tune called Maiden Voyage. That's why it's such a seminal, important piece, because he kind of said, well, you know what? I don't really need to resolve these. And so he just used them as, if you will, just sounds, really. These kind of open, non-traditional chords that didn't resolve. Sus4 chords that stayed there. So that's kind of an exception. Usually a sus4 chord is going to resolve. The last bit I want to talk on is talking about the confusing thing about slash chords. Let's say we have G and F. So you've seen this. Or is it GF, right? It might be written like that. Or actually, it's typically written more like this, right? F is the triad, and G is the bass. You hear this all the time especially in modulations, but also it's sometimes called the pop dominant chord. Really nice sound. So I'm just going to take it out by enjoying some chords. You need to move on with your day. I'm going to just have a little music because I don't want to end with talk. I'll use a lot of slash chords. I know we got to go, but I may as well try to describe what's in my head. I'm using that descending bass line. I'm in A minor. And I'll repeat that. I want to take it to C. Add a 2. Let's do 6 9s. F 6 9. G 6 9. Let's do some diminish. Back to A minor, but I don't want to live there so long. D, what was that? D minor, softened it. G, F over G. And let's add some rhythm. Do C major 7, C7, C6, C minor 6, F. Take this out. C6 9. Thank you for spending some time with me. Goodbye, my friends, and until next time, enjoy your creative music making journey.